Welcome, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be talking about AI and running.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting stuff coming out in this field.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at 3 different studies.
Okay.
And the first one is a study protocol, actually.
Okay.
It's called Study Protocol of a 52-week prospective running injury study in Gothenburg. Spring.
Wow. That's a mouthful.
Yeah,
It is.
long title.
It is, but luckily they shortened it to spring.
Spring, much better.
And this was published in the BMJ Open Sport and Exercise Medicine.
Okay, cool.
And they really dig into the factors that contribute to running injuries.
Yeah, that's a big one for a lot of runners.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it seems like almost everyone who runs gets injured at some point.
Well, yeah, you're not wrong there.
So what are they looking at in terms of injury risk factors?
Well, one of the things that they really emphasize is this idea of repetitive overloading
Okay, that makes
as like a core concept. So just the constant pounding and stress on your body.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they highlight, the fact that this can lead to tissue breakdown
Right.
and ultimately, injury.
Obviously.
And it's kind of alarming because they point out that between 21.6 and 55% of recreational runners
Whoa.
get injured each year.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. It's a huge number.
That's a scary stat.
Yeah.
It makes you think twice about going out for a run.
Yeah, well, I think the good thing is that they're trying to
Yeah.
come up with some ways to try to predict these injuries and hopefully prevent them.
That's really where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
So how are they doing that? Like, what's their approach?
Well, one of the key concepts that they're focusing on in this study is the Modified Acute Chronic Workload Ratio, or MACWR.
The MACWR. Okay, so that's like a way to measure how much stress you're putting on your body.
Yeah, it's a way to assess training load.
Training load, right?
Yeah, and it's more nuanced than just looking at, how many miles you ran this week.
Right, because it's not just about the mileage, it's about how that compares to what your body's used to, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you suddenly ramp up your mileage, that's when you're more likely to get injured.
That's what they're saying, yeah.
Okay.
So this MACWR really takes into account those changes in training load over time.
Oh, interesting. So it's like a dynamic measure.
Yes.
It's not just a static number.
Yeah, exactly.
And how is it modified from the traditional acute chronic workload ratio?
Well, the traditional acute chronic workload ratio, like you said, kind of just looks at, your mileage or your training load over a certain period of time.
Right.
And it divides the acute workload
Okay.
by the chronic workload.
Right. So like your recent training divided by your average training over a longer period.
Exactly.
Got it.
And that can sometimes overlook sudden spikes
Yeah.
in training intensity or volume.
Yeah, I can see that being a problem. Like if you're normally running 10 miles a week and then all of a sudden you do a 20-mile run, that could really throw things off.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But this MACWR actually addresses that
How so?
by excluding the acute load from the chronic load calculation.
Oh, so it's taking out that sudden spike.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And they also take intensity into account.
Okay.
So it's not just distance, but how hard you're working during those runs.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And this allows for a more sensitive assessment of how your body's responding to those changes in training.
So it's like a more personalized way of looking at training load.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And it acts as an early warning system.
Okay.
So it can flag potential issues before they escalate into full-blown injuries.
That's really valuable
Yeah.
because I know for me, I tend to ignore those little niggles and pains until they become big problems.
Yeah, a lot of runners do, I think.
And then it's too late.
Right.
So if you can catch those things early, that can make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's the idea.
I like it.
And what's really insightful about this spring study
Okay.
is that they're also investigating these effect measure modifiers.
Effect measure modifiers, what are those?
These are factors that can influence an individual runner's susceptibility to injury.
So it's not just about the training load itself, but also about the individual runner's characteristics.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it's acknowledging that, not everyone responds to training load in the same way.
Makes sense.
Right.
We're all different. We've all got different bodies, different histories.
Yeah.
So those things are going to play a role.
Yeah, absolutely.
What kind of things are they looking at in terms of those effect measure modifiers?
Well, some examples are like leg dominance.
Oh, interesting.
Like, are you right leg dominant or left leg dominant?
I never really thought about that, but yeah, I guess I'm probably right leg dominant.
Yeah, and then also previous injury history.
That makes sense.
If you've had an injury in the past, you might be more susceptible to re-injury. And then even like differences in biomechanics
Okay.
between your left and right leg.
So like how your legs move.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty detailed.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to create this unique injury risk profile for each runner.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That's really cool.
And I think it speaks to the potential of this type of research.
Yeah.
The more we understand about the individual factors that contribute to injury, the more we can tailor interventions to mitigate those risks.
Absolutely.
So I think this is a really promising area of research.
Yeah, very interesting stuff.
And it's going to be interesting to see what they come up with in terms of, specific recommendations for runners.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to seeing the results of this study
Yeah,
because I think it could have a big impact on how we approach running and injury prevention.
me too.
So what else do we have on tap for today's deep dive?
Well, let's shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and talk about a study that focuses on performance optimization.
All right. From preventing injuries to actually improving performance.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm all ears.
Specifically for marathon runners.
Marathon runners, that's a whole other beast.
Yeah, it is
Very dedicated group.
very dedicated, lots of miles.
Lots of miles, lots of dedication.
Absolutely.
So what's this study about?
This paper is called Benefits of Human AI Interaction for Expert Users Interacting with Prediction Models, a study on marathon running.
Okay.
And it was published in the International Conference on Intelligent User Interfaces.
Wow, that sounds very high tech.
It is.
Human AI interaction, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and they're exploring how coaches are using AI to predict and improve marathon performance.
So they're looking at how coaches are actually using these tools in the real world.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of the interesting thing about this study.
Yeah, because it's one thing to develop the technology, but it's another thing to actually get people to use it
Right. Yeah,
and trust it,
exactly.
especially when it comes to something as complex as marathon training. So how are they using AI to predict marathon performance? What's the method?
So the researchers had developed a marathon prediction model based on case-based reasoning, or CBR.
CBR. Okay, I'm not familiar with that. Can you break that down a bit?
Yeah, so imagine you have a database of thousands of past marathon races,
Oh, okay.
each containing detailed information about the runners and their performance.
So like the training data, their times, maybe some biographical information.
Exactly.
Yeah, follow.
And the CBR model analyzes this data to identify patterns and similarities.
So it's looking for trends in how different runners perform
Yeah.
based on their characteristics.
Right.
Okay.
And then when you input data for a new runner,
Oh, I see.
the model searches its database for similar cases.
So it's finding runners who are like the new runner in terms of their data,
Exactly.
and then it uses those past performances to predict how the new runner will likely perform.
Right. So it's like having this vast library of racing experiences.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty powerful.
Like a data-driven crystal ball.
Kind of, yeah.
But I imagine some coaches might be hesitant to rely on such a system.
Yeah, you're right. And this study addresses this.
They do.
Yeah, they acknowledge the tension between a coach's deep domain knowledge
Right. They've been doing this for years. They
Yeah.
have their own methods and intuitions.
and their potential resistance to data-driven tools.
That makes sense because, as a coach, you build up this experience over time
Yeah.
and you develop a feel for what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's natural to be a little skeptical of some algorithm telling you what to do,
Yeah, absolutely.
especially when it comes to something as nuanced as marathon training.
Right, because there are so many factors involved.
It's not just about the numbers.
Right.
It's about knowing the athlete, understanding their strengths and weaknesses, their mental state, their motivation, all those things.
And this study really acknowledges that.
So how do they address that tension, that potential resistance?
Well, they found that giving coaches more control over the model.
Okay, so not just presenting them with a black box,
Exactly.
but letting them peek under the hood.
Yeah.
I like that.
So allowing them to adjust inputs
Oh, interesting.
and see how those changes impacted the predictions.
So they can play around with it a bit,
Yeah.
see how different factors affect the outcome.
Yeah. And that actually increased their trust
Oh, that's good.
and acceptance.
Makes sense, because if you can understand how the system is working,
Yeah,
you're more likely to trust it
Right.
and feel comfortable using it.
exactly.
So it's not just about the accuracy of the model itself,
Yeah.
but also about how it's presented and how the user can interact with it.
Yeah, it's about that human AI collaboration.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And did this approach actually improve the accuracy of the predictions?
That's the million-dollar question.
Well, yes.
It did.
It did.
Wow, that's amazing.
Remarkably so. They found that the accuracy of the model's predictions improved significantly when coaches were allowed to interact with it.
So it's like the human expertise is actually enhancing the AI's capabilities.
Yeah, right.
It's not about replacing the coach, it's about augmenting them.
Exactly, augmenting their decision-making with data-driven insights.
I love that. It's a partnership,
Yeah, it's a partnership.
not a replacement.
Right.
That's a much more positive way to look at it.
Yeah, I agree.
So AI is not here to take over the world of coaching.
Right.
It's here to help coaches do their jobs better.
Exactly. And this concept is explored further in our third study, which focuses on the use of AI for personalized training plans.
Oh, even more personalization.
Yeah.
This is getting really interesting.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in part 2 of our deep dive.
All right, I can't wait. Let's take a quick break and then dive into that next study.
Welcome back. Now let's dive into our third study, transforming the performance of runners with AI-driven training planning and daily adaptivity.
Sounds like we're moving from the big picture of marathon prediction to a more individual level.
Yeah, you got it.
This one's published in Biorecord, right?
Yep, and it focuses on using AI to create these personalized training plans.
Okay, personalized training, so like tailoring workouts to each runner's needs.
Exactly, and not just like general needs, but their needs on a daily basis.
Daily, so like adjusting the plan every day.
That's right.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
It is, and it all comes down to this idea of balancing training load with recovery.
Makes sense. You can't just keep pushing harder and harder without giving your body a chance to rest and rebuild.
Exactly, and the study really emphasizes this concept of non-functional overreaching, or NFOR.
NFOR, that sounds kind of ominous.
Well, it can be. It's basically a state where an athlete pushes beyond their body's ability to recover.
So like pushing too hard for too long.
Yeah, and it can lead to a whole bunch of problems like persistent fatigue, decreased performance, and even increased susceptibility to illness and injury.
Yikes. Definitely not something you want to mess with.
No, not at all.
So how does this study try to address NFOR?
Well, they developed an AI-driven system they call the Readiness Advisor.
Readiness Advisor. Sounds intriguing.
And this system uses data from wearable sensors like Garmin watches.
Okay, so it's tapping into all that data our wearables are collecting.
Stuff like resting heart rate variability, all that good stuff.
So it's getting a picture of the runner's physiological state.
Right, but it goes beyond just the physiological data.
Oh, really? What else do they use?
They also incorporate subjective feedback from the runners.
Interesting. So it's not just relying on the cold, hard data.
No, they use a questionnaire to ask runners about things like muscle soreness, sleep quality, mood, energy levels, how they're feeling overall.
I like that. It's taking the whole person into account.
Yeah, it's trying to get a holistic view of the runner's readiness.
Holistic. Good word.
So they're combining all this data, the objective stuff from the wearables and the subjective stuff from the questionnaire.
To create this personalized readiness profile.
Exactly, and then they use that profile to adjust the daily training plan.
So if the data shows the runner is fatigued or stressed,
The Readiness Advisor might recommend an easier workout.
or even a rest day,
Yeah, or if the runner is feeling great and their metrics are all good.
it might suggest a more challenging workout.
That's right. It's all about adapting the training to the individual's needs on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so it's like having a virtual coach who's constantly monitoring your state and adjusting your plan accordingly.
Exactly, a very data-driven coach.
Sounds pretty cool. Did it actually work?
Well, the results were really impressive.
Tell me more.
The group whose training plans were adapted daily based on this readiness data saw some major improvements in performance.
Like what?
They had better lactate thresholds, longer times to exhaustion, and they even performed better in a 3,000-meter time trial.
Wow, that's pretty convincing.
Yeah, it really shows the potential of this personalized approach.
But did it make a difference in terms of NFOR?
Yes, that was one of the key findings. The adaptive training group spent significantly less time in states of low readiness compared to the control group who followed a static training plan.
So they were less likely to get into that overreached, under-recovered state.
Exactly.
That's huge.
I think it highlights the potential of AI to create more sustainable training regimens.
Yeah, it's not just about pushing harder all the time, it's about working smarter.
Right, and listening to your body's signals.
Which this AI system can help you do.
Exactly. It can help you find that sweet spot between training and recovery.
I think that's a key takeaway from all three of these studies we've looked at today.
What's that?
AI is giving us new tools to understand our bodies and train more effectively.
Yeah, it's moving us beyond those one-size-fits-all approaches.
And towards this idea of personalized training.
which is really exciting.
It is. I think we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with AI and running.
Yeah, I agree. So where do you think this technology is headed? What other possibilities do you see?
That's a great question, and one we'll explore in our final segment.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into the world of AI and running, haven't we?
We have. It's really fascinating to see how these two fields are intersecting.
It is, and it seems like AI is really starting to make its mark on everything from injury prevention to personalized training.
Absolutely. We're seeing some really innovative applications emerging, and I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg.
I agree. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious to get your thoughts on the bigger picture.
Okay.
Where do you see this technology headed in the next few years? What other areas of running might be transformed by AI?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. There are so many possibilities.
There are, and I think one area that has huge potential is running form analysis.
Oh, interesting.
Imagine being able to use AI to provide real-time feedback on a runner's biomechanics.
So like identifying inefficiencies in their stride.
Exactly. Things like stride length, cadence, foot strike patterns, all those little details that can make a big difference in performance and injury risk.
It would be like having a personal biomechanics expert running alongside you.
Precisely. And the feedback could be tailored to the individual runner's goals and abilities.
So whether you're aiming to improve your speed, endurance, or just run more efficiently, AI could help you fine-tune your form.
That's the idea, and I think it could be a game changer for runners of all levels.
Absolutely, especially for those who are prone to injuries or who are looking to shave seconds off their personal best.
Another area I see a lot of potential in is personalized shoe recommendations.
That would be amazing.
Imagine a system that takes into account your foot strike pattern, your gait, your weight, your training volume, all those factors.
And then it recommends the perfect shoe for your unique needs.
Exactly. No more guesswork, no more trying on dozens of pairs of shoes to find the right foot.
That would save so much time and frustration.
It would, and it could potentially reduce the risk of injuries caused by wearing the wrong shoes.
Definitely a win-win situation.
And what about AI-powered virtual running communities?
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
I think it has a lot of potential, especially as more and more people are embracing virtual fitness platforms.
So it would be like a virtual running club, but with AI features.
Right. Imagine a platform that connects runners from all over the world based on their abilities and goals.
So you could find training partners, get personalized training plans, participate in virtual races, all within this AI-driven community.
Exactly. And AI could even be used to provide motivation and support, kind of like a virtual coach cheering you on.
I think that would be really appealing to a lot of runners, especially those who don't have access to local running groups or who prefer to train on their own.
And think about the possibilities for personalized pacing strategies during races.
Oh yeah, that's something a lot of runners struggle with.
AI could analyze the race course, taking into account things like elevation, weather conditions, and the runner's fitness level.
And then it could create a customized pacing plan that maximizes their chances of success.
It's like having a virtual pacer guiding you every step of the way.
I love that idea.
And these are just a few examples. I'm sure there are countless other applications we haven't even thought of yet.
It's really mind-boggling to think about the potential here.
It is, and I think it's important to remember that AI isn't meant to replace human coaches or the joy of running.
Right, it's about augmenting the human experience.
Exactly. It's about providing us with new tools and insights that can help us run better, smarter, and healthier.
Well, I think we can all agree that this is an exciting time to be a runner.
Absolutely. The future of running is bright, and AI is playing a big part in shaping that future.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of AI and running. I hope you found it as insightful as I have, and until next time, happy running.